and welcome back to my channel. My name is Bree Buonomo. Hi if you're new here, or hey if you've been here before. Today I will be doing my May monthly wrap-up where I talk about the books I read, the things I wrote, and some tidbits about my personal life that I typically don't share elsewhere. So this is going to be probably short and sweet because not much has happened in the last month. So let's just jump into it. So let's first start with the books that I read in the month of May, which unfortunately or fortunately, I don't know, I read 2 books and I have been really in a struggle with reading. I have not been picking up anything physically and liking what I've been reading, so I've been primarily only listening to audiobooks, and because I've only been listening to audiobooks, I have not been finishing all the audiobooks as fast. However, I did finish 2 in this month. The first one I want to talk about is The Diabolic by S.J. Kincaid. This is the first book by the author I have read. It is a sci-fi fantasy young adult adventure story that follows a type of humanoid alien named Nemesis. Nemesis's species is kind of a sort of superhuman. They have like gray skin and they are super strong. And the thing that's unique about them is that when they are being raised, because they're always looked at as like these inhumane wild creatures, until they are bonded to a human they are supposed to protect. So Nemesis is bonded to a young princess in the galaxy, and she loves her like no one else, as her species has been always told that that's how they do. They bond with their human, they become their protector, and they absolutely love them and no one else. So when her princess Sidonia is supposed to go to this emperor's court in order to kind of mingle and bring together all these political families, there is a plan for Nemesis to go in her place. So they do all these kind of corrective surgeries and etiquette tools on her so that she can go and pretend to be the princess just in case anything bad happens. And from there, as you can imagine, some bad stuff happens. So what did I think about this book? I will definitely say the first 10 chapters or so, and they're not long chapters, so the 10 chapters that I read, this kind of bored me to tears, and I almost DNF'd this book. But I was like, you know what? I'm so sick of DNFing books right now, I'm going to push through. And honestly, I am kind of happy I did because I ended up liking this book a lot. So this is a young adult book, but some of the themes that are occurring in this book are much more darker than I expected them to be. One of the reasons for this too is that it was published in 2016, and that was around the time that some darker themes in YA were starting to emerge, so it just kind of struck me that this came out then and not like the later 2018, 2019 as we started seeing things moving forward with. But it definitely has a trigger warning for attempted sexual assault / rape. And there is definitely murder and gore in this as well, and attempted murder and all that. And it is pretty detailed in its descriptions. So there were definitely times where I was like, oh, wow, this is happening. We're going here, where I really didn't expect it. And for me and my personal taste, that definitely added to the story and kept me engaged, where I otherwise think I would have quit if it kept the same tone and pace that it had in the first 10 chapters. So this definitely was an adventure, and I do think while it is sci-fi in some of the ways, it is definitely more fantasy leaning. So this is kind of like a baby sci-fi book. If you're really wanting to dip your toes into sci-fi, this might be a really good book to start with because it's set in space and there are some technical science fiction stuff, but most of the time it just stays in this fantasy world of these alien species and how they interact with the humans of this planetary system. So overall, I did enjoy it. However, I don't think I'm going to be continuing the series. There were definitely some parts of this book that I thought were predictable, and I am just satisfied with how it ended. I do actually own the second book, but I am probably going to unhaul both of them because this was just satisfying for me. I don't see myself ever rereading it, and I don't think I would enjoy myself if I continued the series. I think it could be predictable, and that's just me assuming. But I think other people would really like this series, and I would be willing to bet on this author again. I think if a different series comes out from her, or I'm just aware of what series it is because there might be others out, I will definitely pick it up. But if you are interested in this book, the third one just came out in 2020, so it is now a complete series. And the second and only other book that I finished in the month was Legendborn by Tracy Dion. So this is about a girl named Bree, which, I mean, my own namesake, I was very excited to read about this book. Bree is a young Black girl who lost her mother in a tragic car accident. So when she is in high school and she applies for the UNC Chapel Hill University's high school residential program, which gives them a taste of this early college life and kind of it can advance their degree in some way, Bree and her best friend, Alice, both apply and both get accepted, much to Bree's father's dismay. Bree has been struggling with the grief of her mother as it is entering the year mark of her death, and she's also trying to connect with her mother as her mother also went to this Chapel Hill University, and there's just a lot that she doesn't understand. It is a very good portrayal of grief. So while Bree is on campus, though, this is an urban fantasy, so there is some magic things that she starts to stumble upon. So it is a bit of like a chosen one trope where she stumbles upon this magic and she is unaffected by the magic around her, which is a kind of a head scratcher for a lot of the people who are using the magic. I think they call it mesmerizing. She isn't susceptible to the mesmerizing, and that kind of baffles a lot of people and it calls attention to herself. So anyway, she goes to this college party on her first day there. She kind of stumbles upon these magic users, and from there she falls into this world of the Legendborn. And the Legendborn is a society of young adults and mostly college-aged kids, and they all kind of have this unique type of magic that was associated with the Knights of the Round Table. And very much like the Arthurian legends, there was King Arthur and his descendant, and then the 12 Knights of the Round Table and all of their descendants. And throughout this, there is kind of like a competition for people to be squires to these knights and this entire group. And Bree ends up also falling into this, thinking that they may have answers to her mom's death. So that was a bit of a mouthful. What did I think about this book? Now, I'm not gonna lie, I wanted to love this so much because I love Arthurian legend, and I thought bringing in an urban fantasy with a Black main character would be such a refreshing take and so interesting. And in some ways it was, but it did not deliver in the way that I expected. And I just think it's because this book reminds me so much of the Mortal Instruments. And if you've been around my channel, you know that I have not really liked the Mortal Instruments, and the more I progressed in the Mortal Instruments series, the more I hated every second of it. So this book is so similar. So if you liked the Mortal Instruments, go get yourself a copy of this because, baby, it is right up your alley. But for me, it definitely failed on a lot of fronts because of how similar it was. All of the characters very much remind me of the crew from the Mortal Instruments, especially in the way that they interact with each other and their like designated roles within the group is very, very similar in this book. There's also kind of a parabatai like type of deal in this book as well, though it's called something different. And the magic systems I feel like are very similar as well, even though these are kind of more descendants, whereas the Shadowhunter world is more of like passing down through family and not like reincarnation as this is kind of. So it's just kind of strange. Like they both are very, very similar. And when I started connecting that piece because of a friend that I was reading with, I couldn't get it out of my head. And it was just like, oh my God, here's Clary. And oh my God, here's Magnus, and oh my God, here's Alec. It really stuck out to me, and that really hindered my experience, I think. Further, the magic system, I think, was a little bit too complicated and also not expanded enough. So there's a bit of an info dump with the magic system in this book, and while it definitely is described in that info dump, we're kind of like given it and then moved on from it, and we don't really get to see it evolve and how it impacts everything. And I always get kind of confused at exactly how it worked because we only had that one small section. Further, a second magic system is tied into the story about like halfway through, and that made it more complicated. And I don't know how the story is going to progress, but I feel like maybe it should have been kept for another book, or maybe it should have been introduced earlier on, because I just thought it got messy with the two magic systems and how they might have connected or they didn't connect at all. It was very complicated. And the other thing that I really didn't like, which is more of a personal pet peeve as a therapist, is that there is a therapist introduced in this book for Bree to cope with her grief. And it just didn't do it for me. Now, I don't know if the author has gone through therapy or if she got advice from people or if she was just kind of condensing things so that a lot of the boring details were sussed out. But therapy is not just you go to someone and you meet them for the first time. There's a lot of paperwork involved. There's a lot of making sure that someone's going to be compatible with you. And that wasn't done in this book. So it's just so unbelievable to me that her dad made a phone call because she's a minor, got her therapy, and then we meet the next day. That's not how this goes either way. I mean, there's a lot of process to it. Now, on college campus, there's probably a little bit of leniency because technically the school have a lot of records, because I know from my own college, like how it was done, like it was really much like, okay, here, I'm going to like schedule an appointment, sign off on something, and then show up. So I could see a little bit more of this, but because this is just so out there and like this is an urban fantasy setting and she's also in a young program because she's still a high school student, she's not actually a university student. I just feel like it was very messy. And then the thing that, like, aside from that, I could probably put past the fact that there was not a lot of paperwork done because I get it, we don't have a lot of time. But the therapist was extremely unethical in the manner of her conducting these sessions and what she was doing during them. At one point, she even mentions that she's unethical and then continues to do it anyway, and that bothered me. Like, I just wish if this character had an agenda from the start to meet with the main character, Bree, then she should have just told her dad, hey, I can't do it as a therapist, but I can talk to her as someone who knew her mom. Because that's essentially why her dad got this therapist to talk with her anyway, is because the therapist went to school with her mom. And I feel like that's crossing a boundary for me. Maybe not everyone would agree with that because everyone has a different therapy approach, but I would not feel comfortable as someone who would be coming to me for grief counseling, but then also knowing that I have a connection, like a personal connection to my family member that died, and that they would want to more talk about that bond. Like that would be blurring lines for me personally, and I just don't think that's ethical. But that is my own opinion, and that is partly why I didn't like this, and I know it's completely on me. I also feel like the college setting was kind of done for convenience in this case, which as someone who wrote younger adults, like in their 18, 19 years old, in a college setting for a very similar reason, I understand why it was done, but she was still a teenager in high school and not actually a college student, that I felt like the college background, like the university background, was only done so that parents weren't wondering what was going on with their children the entire time. As with Shadowhunters, granted, I know Clary's mom had some issues in that book, but the rest of them, like, they were all born in this world. And then you had Clary and Simon who were not. And it's like, is anyone missing you from school right now? Is anyone's parents, like, looking for them? What is happening? So I just feel like this was the reason for this book, but it really didn't do anything because the character was very immature and had gotten into so much trouble already. It was just a very confusing time, I think. But I appreciate that she tried to put them in a setting where some of those questions of, well, where are their parents at? Why aren't their parents checking in on them? Wouldn't the parents be calling the police? I get why it was done, but I don't think it fit. And I wish she was just college age and we would have maybe had it a little bit easier. So overall, I know I ranted. I do think the author has a lot of potential. I will 100% pick up a new series from her. I think her writing was good for a debut and I can easily see it getting better. But I will not be continuing with the series either because it was not my favorite. Okay, so next I'm going to talk about my writing. So I've been pretty transparent because I've been doing a new series called The Rework Chronicles on my channel, where me and my co-writer Caitlin have been diving into reworking the manuscript we once wanted to publish into a story that is completely different from the one we were telling. We pretty much cut out 2 plot lines, well, 3 technically, and we are just focusing on the one character, reusing some of the stuff we had in the old book, but really fleshing out a more detailed plot for her because she is a very strong character and her plot was the most cohesive that we had to begin with. So we have been doing that for the entire month of May. Our initial goal was to finish the book in May. However, I think both of us thought we were going to be more ambitious and way more productive because we had more written than we did, and we did not have as much written. So we were very busy with working and lives and a whole bunch of stuff. and we didn't finish it, but we do have, I think, about 25,000 words written, which is half of a nano novel, which is great. And I know that we are going to keep pushing through and we will finish it soon, which is nice. It's definitely easier when you have some stuff written, you have the plot plotted, and you're having two brains instead of one. So it's definitely a little bit easier writing this book than some others, but we still have some challenges we're working on. So that has been the majority of my writing for the month of May. However, I do have, I guess, some tidbits that I can share. I actually entered a few different submission stuff. So one is a magazine submission. I ended up submitting 3 poems to a magazine. I have submitted to this magazine before in the past and they have rejected everything, but I am determined that one day they are going to find something they like that is mine. So I submitted 3 poems in hopes that one of them would be published in the fall magazine. So we're going to see how that goes. They have up until August 3rd, I think, to get back to me. So I may not hear from them anytime soon. I may hear from them tomorrow. Who knows? But I am excited just to put myself out there and get a little bit more comfortable with submitting stuff, especially my shorter works. I also submitted to a kind of competition where you can submit your first chapter of your completed novel for a chance of winning prizes such as a discussion with a literary agent, editors, and possibly even finding an agent that way. So I did submit my prophecy project, as I have a completed and a edited version of that book, and it might not be the best version, but I think it is pretty solid for where it's at. So it was a free entry. I got a free entry. I might as well use it, and that is what I did. So I'm not going to talk about it too much just because I'm very confused at how it all runs. The website is not most user-friendly, but I'm excited for it, and if I do have details, I'll definitely keep you guys updated on both of those fronts. I would love to be able to say that I'm getting published somewhere, even if it might not be exactly where I was intending it to be, but I'm excited, so I will keep you guys updated on how those submissions go. And that was the big change this month, I think, is that I just submitted to stuff. More on the YouTube, but related to writing, is I do want you guys to know that I know my content has been pretty, like, repetitive, I would say, and for some people I think that's great. Like, I've been doing my rework chronicles and I've been doing like little chatty videos and stuff like that, but I do want to let you guys know I have about 6 different writing experiments planned, and some of them I've been planning for months, like since last July I've been planning some of them, and time has just not been friendly to me, especially with all of the stuff that I have going on in my life. I have been trying to find time and balancing everything, and I really want to do them. But a couple of them I need the weather to cooperate. A couple of them I need like full fleshed out days where I'm not doing anything, and those have been few and far between. And some of them I just want to make sure that I do justice because they are something that I want to bring out and do my best with so I don't have to repeat it in the future. So I do have a couple of things planned. I just don't know when they're coming. So I know I love writing experiments, and I know some of my followers do too. So if you guys are looking for them, trust me, I am trying my hardest. I'm going to try to bring them. And I also have some slower artsy type videos that are like more calmer, like no talking vlogs that I'd like to try out. I'm hoping that I can do 2 of them soon. But again, time may be fickle and I don't know if I'm going to, but I will try my hardest. So just know that I do have things coming. I just don't know when they're going to happen. And the only last thing that I have to talk about would be my personal life, but I actually just did an entire video on the biggest update in my life. So I will leave it in the card above because that has a pretty detailed account of what has been going on and what changes you might be seeing on my channel in the next year or so. So I'm not going to repeat all of that. And honestly, I don't have too much other exciting things going on other than what that video talked about. So I don't feel like beating a dead horse and talking about it here again. If you have any questions, if you want to know more about me, let me know. Just leave a comment down below. I did mention that, I'm almost at 700 followers, which is amazing. And my like unstated, but my love to see goal would be getting 1,000 subscribers this year. And if I do that, I would like to do a Q&A, either a video or a Q&A live stream, one or the other. So if you are interested in that, be sure to subscribe to my channel and tell your friends to subscribe, and maybe we can have a 1,000 subscriber party together. So otherwise, guys, that's really all the updates I have. I will be back with a new video on Tuesday. And until next time, I will see you then.